What was supposed to be a simple family trip, a happy lunch to honor Jack's 18th birthday, became something completely different. Like always, my husband Will was very focused on his work while I did the dishes and baked pies, dreaming of a day full of laughter and warmth. I often wondered when the surface of our life, which seemed to be going well, had started to crack, like old furniture that is coming apart at the seams. People who lived nearby and knew us thought we were a great family, a beautiful house with well-behaved kids who were always happy and spotless. But I was the only one who knew about the evil that had moved into this safe and comfortable world. Will was always wanting to do something, so he seemed like a shadow that disappeared into the chaos of his office life all the time, while I was slowly becoming very lonely. As the hot sun touched my skin that day at the beach, it made me feel even more alone and empty. Jack and I were having fun while throwing a ball and talking about funny memories. I looked away for a split second, and while he was putting sunscreen on my back, I felt the soft touch of his hand. The act seemed so simple and caring at the time, but as the hours went by, it became more complicated. My mind was filled with broken dreams, and I realized that Jack was the only person who really noticed me left. His careless but kind words and actions made me feel warm in a way I hadn't felt in years, something that Will had taken away from me a long time ago. It wasn't until that moment that I realized Jack was filling the hole my husband had left behind. I couldn't help but think about what this could mean for us. However, the family party I had carefully planned quickly turned into a sad event. As we sat on the sand and laughed, the noise of the other people having fun faded into the background. I felt like I was moving farther away on the inside, like a wave had wiped out all the joy. The heavy silence forced me to face a hard truth. I no longer felt the fire I had been looking for. Will came home tired and uninterested. He didn't say hello, ask about my day, or show any care for his son. I was very aware of his absence as I sat at the kitchen table. It was no longer soft, it was too much. I had become an ordinary part of his life, something he could easily ignore. As I stood in front of the empty desk, my mind went to old, dirty memories. I was mad at myself for letting things go the way they did. I couldn't remember what kind of woman I used to be, the woman who was proud of her family. I felt like a shadow of the person I used to be. Needs to be seen badly, to be important, to feel important. As I watched Jack carefully take in every word that night, I realized that he was the only one who could still make my heart beat faster. His bright young eyes reminded me of the hope and trust I used to have, but for a split second, everything changed. I was shocked when he touched my back gently. When his eyes met mine, they were filled with a kind of sensitivity I had never felt. From a guy, I didn't know what to say. Everything changed at that moment. All the feelings, being alone, and not wanting to keep up this act. It all came to the surface. It was like a silent storm hit me and brought out facts I had been hiding for a long time. It felt like I had betrayed myself when I was hit. It was like I had been hit by myself. When I found myself back on the shore, surrounded by people, I realized I had built my own jail and needed to find the strength to escape. My feelings were falling apart and tearing me apart. Even though it wasn't love, the link that was growing between us felt unbearable. Jack's face went from being amused to confused as I looked at him, and I knew that we were both on the verge of something huge. I was about to make a finding that would leave me with no questions, but only a truth that would not go away. How could I love someone who was never mine? Our loneliness and hope were linked, but they were on different coasts. It looked like the wall between us could fall just as I was feeling swamped with fear and doubt. And with each passing second, I realized it wasn't love. It was a sad, constant sense of time passing, full of losses that I couldn't get rid of. I was on a long, empty beach, torn between love and anger. Will stood for the dark parts of my past, while Jack was my light. They didn't really belong to me, though, so how could I move on? Summer days used to make me think they were calm, but this time, their light felt like they was telling me something else. The sea looked like it was calling us from the window, and the sun was shining in. But the thought of Will's constant absence made me sad and took away any joy I felt. He always put his work ahead of us, and every time it hurt like a knife, going through my chest. I quickly got rid of the thought and left with Jack, who was the only person still ready to share these brief moments with me. While we were on the way to the beach, I couldn't help but notice how grown up Jack was getting. He looked like he was lost in his own world as he sat in the passenger seat with his headphones on and looked out the window. What I knew hit me like a wave. He might be gone for good if I blink. It was both scary and strangely freeing to feel this way. As these thoughts remained, I thought of the times when he was younger and his small hand was on mine. His laughter filled the room. We both felt like we let out a big breath when we finally got there. Jack helped me take the bags to a quiet spot by the water, which made me feel better. I put the towels out on the warm sand while he set up the umbrella in a way that made me think of him as a kid again. As I watched him change, I wanted to talk to him to find out what was going on inside him. I didn't say anything, though. I just laid down on the towel and let the sun cover me like an old pillow. I thought about the suntan oil as I tried to calm down. I saw Jack hesitate when I asked him for help. It was like he wanted to get away from the situation. I could feel my chest getting tighter when he finally agreed. It caught me off guard when he touched me with hands that were no longer those of a kid. They were soft and careful. I had no idea why this simple moment hit me so hard and made my body shake in a way I hadn't felt before. Jack slowly put on the oil, his hands moving as if he were thinking about what to do. He touched me in a steady beat, and I closed my eyes. I felt something I hadn't felt in what seemed like a long time. The feel of his hands made me think of the first time I held him as a helpless baby. That memory was very different from the feeling that was going through me at the moment, but his touch soon became more sure of itself and moved lower. It felt like a storm had come out of nowhere and caught me off guard. I tried to say something to tell him to stop, but nothing came out. Although I was trying to cool down in the silence, I told myself that it was just a kind act. Still, it seemed like reality around me changed every second. He kept his hands close to the edge of the towel for a while, and I could tell he wasn't sure what to do. I could have stopped him at any time, but I told him in a whisper that everything was okay. Those words hung in the air like a judgment that could not be changed. At that time, there was more silence between us. I felt like I was sinking deeper into myself, and his touch was the only thing that was left. As his fingers moved down, I could no longer fight him. My inner objections went away, leaving me in a tizzy of feelings I couldn't even explain to myself. It was too much for my feelings, and I felt both lonely and excited at the same time. Even though I didn't understand what was going on, my joy grew. Maybe it was because I had been holding on to a longing for so long. When I was on the beach and my life was broken and empty, Jack became a rare light I could no longer ignore. There was a rush of feelings building up inside me that I couldn't ignore. He wasn't just someone I cared about. In a dark world, he was the only thing that could make me feel alive. When we looked at each other, I saw that every spark in his eyes was the same as mine. It seemed like fate had given me this chance, which I couldn't pass up. By letting go of the past and the future, I was able to give in to the warmth of the moment. I didn't know what to say, so I let out a whisper. "You can go on." Those words seemed to speak for themselves, born from the fire of the moment. He went on. With each deliberate movement of his hands, I felt more than just physical sensations. I closed my eyes and let his touch create a cloud of magic around me. It was a world I didn't want to leave. It felt like he was getting to the core of who I am. a sense of wonder and truthfulness. It was clear to both of us that this was not a normal moment. It was a new way to connect, a ringing of feelings that couldn't be named. At that very moment, I realized that his hands were doing more than just touching me. They were currents of an unnameable feeling that mixed happiness, lightness, and madness. I could feel a strong desire tearing me apart from the inside. My lips were pressed together tightly. That desire became clear when my thoughts stopped, and there was only the sound of our breathing together to break the silence. I opened my eyes and looked up at him. For a split second, everything else seemed unimportant. We were on this endless beach by ourselves, away from everything else. The rules and the world didn't matter in this case. It was only a moment, but I felt like there was a whole world of possibilities inside of it. Every second was filled with those rare feelings that are often hidden by the routine of daily life. I wanted to stop time, so the wall between us wouldn't move, and our souls and hearts would always be one. Our secret haven was this beach picnic. Even the quiet had meaning, and we didn't need to say anything. My worries and fears went away for a while, and in their place was a weak link that held us together. We went through an endless sea of emotions, like two ships seeking shelter from a storm. This shows that feelings can sometimes go beyond what words can describe. As we shared a quiet, close reality, we stopped being just mother and son. Instead, we were like flowers that were trying to reach the light without realizing that it could get too bright one day. I didn't notice how quickly time was passing as the sun went down and threw long shadows over the beach. Taking deep breaths of the fresh sea air, I fell into a peaceful silence. It felt like a repair, a break from the dull, worn-out life that had taken its place. But now it was time to go back home, and with that came a familiar fear that crept up on me like a cold that wouldn't go away. As Jack and I got into the car, I felt like everything was going to happen anyway. As we drove a few blocks, I got lost in my thoughts and tried to separate myself from the unbearable pain that seemed to be eating away at my soul. Each turn of the wheels made the fragile peace I had built up around myself shrink, as if something scary was waiting for us at home. Once I got there, I was back in my small world, surrounded by the apathy that Will had created by being absent, all the time. He talked out loud while working as if no one else was in the house. He seemed to be stuck in his own little world. I could hear his steps in the kitchen as he made dinner, but it was clear that he was thinking about something else. Every time he looked away from me, it made it harder to hold back the anger that was building up inside me. Will, are you hungry again? So I could keep things somewhat normal, I asked. His smile was fake and short. There was a small nod, and he kept looking through the cabinets for something to do in the evening. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Jack. His eyes, his hands, and his full attention, all of it made the lines between what used to feel normal less clear. I tried to get rid of those thoughts, but they kept coming back, over and over. I knew I had to stop and force myself to be quiet, but a darker part of me didn't want to. It missed the connection and care I used to get from Will. As the days went by, Jack became quiet. His attitude, which he didn't say, said more than anything he could have. As I cooked or sat in the living room, his eyes became sharp and never left my side. I couldn't take his eyes off of me one night as I watched TV. I didn't reject it. Instead, I let it happen, which led to a silent bond between us. Something that neither of us could put into words, but deeply felt. There was a lot of heat in the house on the weekend. We left again, leaving Jack and me alone. I don't know where the desire to go back to the beach, our beach, came from, but it was strong. I might have been trying to get away from the stuffy house, or I might have been holding out hope that the fresh air would help me clear my mind. It was clear that we were tense during the drive. Jack sat there with his headphones on and looked out the window. I felt something tighten inside me, causing me to face what was going on between us. It was peaceful and calm in the morning. As I worked on breakfast in the kitchen, the smell of freshly made coffee and warm toasted bread mixed together. I couldn't help but smile as I thought about how many times Will had quickly looked at me before running out the door. The regular beat of our lives could be seen in how our mornings had become like a clock. Today, though, he walked up to me and kissed my face. For a brief moment, I felt his presence like the soft warmth of early spring sunlight, but before long, he was leaving and going back to his dull, work-centered world. I heard his steps on the stairs and then the door slam, leaving me alone in the sunny, quiet house. Like always, Jack walked into the kitchen almost inaudibly, like a ghost in the early morning light. It was fascinating how still he was as he stood by the window and looked outside. I looked at him and saw that his eyes were fixed on me, just like they were on the beach when he seemed to have no thoughts about anything else. It was clear to both of us that this relationship had grown into more than just a mother-son tie. It was very hot, and I could feel his breath behind me. It was a gentle reminder of how love and warmth could swallow everything. I was stunned by how intense the moment was, and I tried to stop him with a quiet word, but before I could say anything else, he moved closer, and I felt both scared and excited. "I need to leave," I started, but he stopped me. When his lips touched mine, it made me feel a lot of different feelings. As soon as I kissed him back, everything fell apart. I knew it was wrong. I was so caught up in my feelings of love and anxiety that I forgot about what was right or wrong. I knew it could destroy everything. I felt alive again after each kiss, which was something I hadn't felt in a long time. I broke all the rules and went into the unknown in those brief moments. The day went on, but I felt like I was in a storm. Jack and I went past a line that was never meant to be crossed. I now knew that this wasn't a mistake that would go away soon, but a heavy load that would get heavier over time. I knew I was on the edge of my own world and couldn't get away from the shame that was pressing down on me. I couldn't get away from his look or his small signs of love, which made me feel both longing and desire. Even so, it still felt like we were precariously close to falling into a chasm. That's when I realized something very important had changed about me. We were a part of something that was against the rules, but it felt important. When his hands touched me, the feeling broke down the barriers that were holding me back and let feelings that I had been denying come out. I wondered if I had done something wrong, because I was